June 3, 1973, Le Bourget Airport, Paris. 500,000 spectators craned their necks as the Soviet Union's Tu-144 supersonic passenger jet climbs into the sky for its demonstration flight. This is the Cold War's ultimate flex, proving Soviet engineering can match the West's Concorde. The Tu-144 climbs steeply, rolls gracefully, then suddenly pitches into a violent dive as if the pilot is trying to pull out of a catastrophic stall. At 500 feet, the left wing folds upward and tears away from the fuselage. The aircraft disintegrates mid-air, and flaming wreckage rains down on the village of Goussainville below. Bodies are found in kitchens and gardens, houses are obliterated, and all 6 crew members aboard, plus 8 civilians on the ground, are dead. The world just watched the Soviet aerospace program commit suicide on live television. Western engineers immediately noticed something suspicious. The Tu-144 looked almost identical to the Anglo-French Concorde, same delta wing configuration, same drooping nose, same 4-engine layout, down to details that shouldn't exist unless you'd seen the classified blueprints. Aviation journalists started calling it Concordski, a mocking portmanteau suggesting the Soviets had simply copied the design. The Soviets denied everything, claiming independent parallel development. They were lying. What the West suspected, the KGB had actually done, and the story of how they stole the Concorde's secrets reads like a spy thriller. Welcome to Shadowworks. Today we open the file on the Tupolev Tu-144, the plane that was pushed too hard, too fast, just to beat the capitalists, and the 140 people who paid the price. In the mid-1960s, the KGB launched Operation Brunhilde, one of the most successful industrial espionage campaigns of the Cold War. Soviet intelligence recruited Sergei Pavlov, a Soviet aviation translator working in Paris, who had access to Sud Aviation and Aérospatiale, the companies building the Concorde. Over 3 years, Pavlov and his network photographed thousands of pages of technical blueprints, stole tire compound samples, bribed cleaning staff to access secure areas, and literally swept up metal shavings from factory floors to reverse engineer the titanium alloys used in the wings. They documented wind tunnel test results, engine specifications, even the internal cabin layouts. Everything flowed back to Moscow through dead drops and diplomatic pouches. By 1968, Tupolev Design Bureau had a nearly complete blueprint of the Concorde sitting on their desks, and Soviet leadership issued a simple directive: build this, make it faster, and make it fly first. We must beat the capitalists at their own game. And they did succeed in one metric: the Tu-144's first flight on December 31, 1968. Beat the Concorde by exactly 2 months, giving the Soviets a propaganda victory they desperately needed. But speed came at a cost. The Tu-144 was a fundamentally flawed machine because Tupolev's engineers didn't just copy the Concorde. They had to improvise and rush solutions without fully understanding the aerodynamics. The result was a supersonic aircraft that technically worked but was barely controllable, horrifically inefficient, and borderline dangerous. It was faster than the Concorde Mach 2.15 versus Mach 2.04, and slightly larger. But those numbers hid catastrophic compromises that would eventually kill the program. The engineering problems were systemic and terrifying. First, the engines. Instead of developing proper supersonic civilian turbofans like the Concorde's Olympus 593, Tupolev just grabbed Kuznetsov NK-144 military afterburning turbojets, essentially fighter jet engines strapped to a passenger plane. They were absurdly loud, consuming fuel at catastrophic rates and producing 140 decibels inside the cabin, even at cruise altitude. Passengers literally couldn't hear each other speak and had to communicate by passing handwritten notes because conversation was impossible. Second, stability. The stolen wing design worked on the Concorde because it was integrated with sophisticated control systems the Soviets didn't understand, so the Tu-144 suffered violent pitch oscillations at high speed. Tupolev's desperate fix was adding retractable canard foreplanes, mustache wings that deployed from the nose during takeoff and landing to provide extra lift. A crude Band-Aid solution the elegantly designed Concorde never needed. The Tu-144 wasn't a refined passenger jet, it was a hot rod, fast and dangerous, held together by improvisation and hope. So what caused the Paris disaster? For decades, the official Soviet explanation was mechanical failure, vague, evasive, classified. But Western investigators and eyewitnesses knew something else happened. Here is what we now know. A French Mirage 3 fighter jet was secretly flying reconnaissance above the Tu-144 during its demonstration, tasked with photographing the aircraft's canard configuration and engine intakes, standard Cold War intelligence gathering. The Tu-144's crew wasn't informed a military jet would be in the airspace. At the end of the demonstration, Soviet pilot Mikhail Kozlov began his descent and suddenly spotted the Mirage directly above him at the last second. Whether he thought it was a collision risk or simply panicked at seeing an unannounced military aircraft is unclear. Kozlov violently pulled the control column to dive away from the perceived threat. The G-forces instantly exceeded the aircraft's structural limits. The left wing failed under the stress and separated from the fuselage, and the Tu-144 broke apart. It was espionage gone catastrophically wrong. A French spy plane observing a Soviet plane built from stolen French plans. And the secrecy killed 14 people. The debris field was apocalyptic. One witness in Goussainville described seeing the Tu-144's fuselage cartwheeling through the air, trailing fire, before impacting a house and exploding. Engine parts embedded themselves in buildings hundreds of meters away. The 6 crew members, pilot Mikhail Kozlov, co-pilot Valery Molchanov, navigator Vladimir Benderov, flight engineer Yuri Seliverstov, and 2 flight engineers died instantly on impact. 8 civilians on the ground were killed, including a woman hanging laundry in her garden and children playing in their homes. Over 60 people were injured by falling debris. The Concorde, scheduled to fly immediately after, was grounded for the rest of the day while crews cleared body parts and wreckage from the runway approach. The Paris crash should have killed the program immediately, but Soviet pride wouldn't allow it. The Tu-144 entered passenger service in 1975 on the Moscow-Almaty route, becoming the world's first supersonic passenger airline. It was a disaster. Only 55 passenger flights were ever completed over 2 years because the aircraft was unreliable. Expensive and terrifying to fly on. The cabin noise was so extreme that passengers reported headaches and nausea. The vibrations were violent and flights were frequently canceled due to mechanical failures. In 1978, a Tu-144 crashed during a test flight near Moscow, killing 2 crew members when a fuel line ruptured and caused an in-flight fire. That was the final straw. Aeroflot quietly retired the entire fleet in June 1978, and the Soviets pretended the program had been a success. Meanwhile, the Concorde continued flying wealthy passengers in luxurious comfort for 27 years until 2003, completing over 50,000 safe flights. The Tu-144 flew passengers 55 times. That's not a typo, 55. The ironic epilogue: in the 1990s, after the Soviet Union collapsed, NASA paid to resurrect one Tu-144 for supersonic research flights. They wanted data on supersonic aerodynamics, and the Concorde was too expensive to lease. So American engineers ended up flying a Soviet plane built from stolen American and French designs to help develop the next generation of supersonic aircraft. The Cold War's strangest full circle. The Tu-144 proves a harsh truth about Cold War engineering. You can steal blueprints, but you can't steal the decades of institutional knowledge, testing, refinement, and safety culture that make those blueprints work. The Soviets had the plans for the Concorde, but not the understanding. They built a supersonic passenger jet in half the Development time with twice the problems rushed it into service for propaganda purposes and killed 140 people in the process. It was speed without wisdom, ambition without competence, and it became a monument to what happens when national pride overrides engineering reality. The Concorde was a masterpiece. The Tu-144 was a warning. The Soviets stole Western secrets and built a death trap. But the espionage game went both ways, and sometimes the CIA's operations were even more audacious. In 1974, while the Tu-144 was failing in passenger service, the CIA was executing the most expensive covert operation in history, raising an entire Soviet nuclear submarine from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, using a giant mechanical claw, disguised as a deep-sea mining ship, all to steal Soviet nuclear missile technology and code books. They called it Project Azorian, and it was Howard Hughes, the CIA, and a sunken submarine, the wildest salvage operation ever attempted. Join us next time as we investigate Project Azorian. Click here to subscribe so you don't miss it.